Hello, welcome. June the 11th, I believe, which is pretty hard to believe considering we've been doing this now since March, I think. And that time, even though it's been in lockdown, seems to have absolutely flown by. And we are kind of cracking on this week, trying to look more towards the future rather than the past, because I think we've all been stuck in a bit of a time warp, and probably now is the time to look towards the future. So as usual, we are joined by Chloe, who's the co-host today. How
Hi
you doing,
guys.
Chloe? Good, good.
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really good.
We have Kat Gisby from Clarendon Management. Kat is a theatre agent, I believe, aren't you?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
And we have Helen Kelly, who is from International Artist Management.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good for this kind of weird week. This is a bit of a strange week this week. It's kind of the weather's gone a bit weird. We're kind of coming out of lockdown and we're kind of half in lockdown still. So as we were talking to Kat a little bit earlier, it seems to be a bit of a weird kind of time, but we're cracking on and we're trying to look towards the future and see what the future might hold for the arts. We've been talking a lot about the music industry, so today is a little bit more of a focus on theatre and the arts, and then we'll probably just kind of go into all kinds of other subjects as well. So if we start with you, Kat, just give us a little brief synopsis of what you do, kind of thing.
Cool. Okay. Nice big question. Right. So basically, I'm an agent and I look after a base of 60, as of today, 66 clients,
Wow.
representing them across commercial and TV and film and cruise and theatre projects, which is really good fun. It's nice and varied. And we try and promote their best interests as much as we possibly can and get them seen for as many different things. And that's our personal challenge. We've brought on specifically people that can cross platforms. So if you've got a musical theatre person that is particularly interested in cruise or suits certain commercials or music videos, that's what we really, really like. And we think it makes for a much more interesting and varied career as well. So if you've got if you do a panto over Christmas and then you shoot a nice little commercial end of January, then you've got a nice little tour in February, and then it's much more interesting to be able to do lots of different things. But yeah, myself and my colleague Lee J. Townsend, who Helen is very good friends with as well, we manage 66 people, and we're trying to do our best for them at the moment. And I don't know if any are watching right now, but we hope they're all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it a challenge managing that many people at this time?
At the moment, honestly, no. It's we deliberately try and keep our numbers really, really small because we don't want them to be numbers. And that's why we're Clarendon Personal Management, because we want to look after everyone individually, and particularly for graduates that have come out, especially this year, and a lot of guys that didn't get the chance to have their showcases, so they haven't been seen on stage properly in person. That we try and help graduates and give them as much guidance as we possibly can. And being ex-actors, both of us ourselves, we're in a really fortunate position to help people do that. So that's what we try and do.
Brilliant. And Helen, tell us a little about what you do.
Okay, so I am an agent at International Artist Management, and a bit like Kat, we represent people across the field, so TV, film, commercial, theatre. We are very strong on the film and TV, but we do also have a lot of jobbing theatre actors as well. As Kat said, a lot of people want to cross over between the two and make that jump, and it seems to work quite successfully in a lot of cases. So yeah, I mean, for me at the moment, I have my own list at the agency. So there's a couple of agents, and then I have my own personal list of clients. So I feel the same way as Kat. I want to have a personal relationship with everyone that I represent. I feel very much a responsibility during this lockdown to keep in constant communication with everyone. If anyone wants to speak to me or call me up or talk things through, you know, I want to make myself available for that. I think we're all overwhelmed sometimes by the situation that we're in and how the future looks, but you know, I want to make sure that I have an outlet for those people to speak to me whenever they can. And we'll go into more about how the fury looks in a bit, but I don't want to say everything interesting all at once. I've only got a limited repertoire, so
yeah. Well, it's going to be fascinating for me because I'm more on the music side, so it's going to be really interesting to see how it works on this side of the industry as well. And Chloe, you obviously work in kind of both camps as well, don't you? I guess.
Yeah, I do. It's weird thinking about them as two camps. Yeah, I kind of have always shaped my career in that way, and I guess in you and I doing the isolation gigs and setting up the virtual gig platform and sort of delving into that a lot more in this period, that's sort of been a bit more of my camp. But I am still represented, and I'm still sort of trying to keep up with things that are going on in the industry, trying to keep up with workshops and all that stuff. So, you know, because it feels a bit like, obviously that side of it feels a bit like it's kind of stopped and it's a bit static. But I know from speaking to, well, both of you, Kat and Helen, like over this period, and also from speaking to my agent, you know, there's stuff going on, but it's different and it's changing, isn't it? And it's kind of like, it's almost like sort of being a bit patient, but equally you're also a bit like, how patient and how long do we wait to figure out where we can go and where we can put our energy in that way, because it's a bit confusing. But I guess that's why we are having this chat today, to look at that a bit. And obviously Elliot and I were thinking about what sort of topic that was on our minds at the moment. And I think you know, being sort of 3 months nearly into the lockdown, we've spent, like you said, we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we've been dealing with this period and, you know, coping with it mentally, and also, you know, seeing where our energy is going in terms of our careers. But we want to spend this moment to look ahead a little bit more, and I guess try and find some sort of light at the end of a tunnel. Obviously we're not looking for any answers because no one really has any at the moment, but I'm just really interested, as like, you know, knowing you guys as friends for so long, but also I'm really interested to hear your sort of professional take on it, and how you're both coping personally, but also with your clients, and how you're working to kind of reassure them and navigate them, like you've both mentioned, because you do have sort of personal relationships with them, and they will be looking to you right now. I guess some of maybe more of the younger ones that haven't been around for as long and trying to sort of navigate their way. So I guess that leads me into my first question, but I just wanted to basically ask, how are you, or how have you been working through this period to help yourself and to help your clients, but also how are you now at this point where we've kind of got 1 foot in and 1 foot out of lockdown, working to look ahead? So whoever wants to answer that first, go ahead.
I can go for it.
Go for it, Helen.
So I can talk a little bit, if it's helpful, about how I think the industry is going to look in terms of film and TV. Because I've been following the guidelines that are being put forward by the film and TV industry about how they can resume filming. And obviously we know at the moment there's soaps like Emmerdale, EastEnders going back because they're able to adhere to the guidelines because they're doing COVID-19 storylines. So that is obviously a completely different thing. But the majority of TV productions, you know, they just want to carry on where they left off. So big series want to carry on, like Peaky Blinders, for example. But it's a lot more difficult because they have a number of international actors. They have people coming in from different countries. And also, obviously, the way they shoot the scenes, some of it can be done social distancing in mind, but some of it obviously can't. So one of the things that has been suggested by the industry is that we have these things called actor isolation pods. Basically, the actors would quarantine together for 2 weeks in a place, wherever that place may be, a hotel or wherever. It's kind of like a compound, and which is quite cool, really. But essentially, they would have to quarantine for 2 weeks so that they could make sure that nobody had symptoms, and therefore they could be allowed to film in close proximity to each other. But obviously, that is an idea of a way forward, but it's whether or not that would actually work in reality, because there's just lots of reasons why it might not. And obviously, there's actors who you would have to pay a lot of money to say to them, oh, as well as your job, you're going to have to do 2 weeks of quarantine, where it's kind of just you're in the place before you start filming.
Yeah. Can I ask a bit on that, Hels? If they were to do that, obviously they've got the 2 week quarantine, but then when they're filming, will they carry on doing that, or will they be allowed to, once they're actually in motion with the filming, or will it be while they're doing those 2 weeks?
I think it's dependent on whether they get testing, for example. That's going to make it completely different, because they can test all of the actors, and then obviously the 2 weeks is just to make sure that nobody's got any symptoms in the meantime, because obviously you can start to display symptoms after you've been tested and still be positive. So if they can't get testing, then I'm not quite sure if it would be enough of a guarantee to say that you were quarantining everyone together for 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? So there's the logistics of it that I'm not really clear on. But the other thing is, you have to take quarantining into account in terms of travel. So at the moment, we're obviously imposing a quarantine on anyone flying into the UK. So that would have an impact on both actors coming into film and actors who go to other countries to film and then have to come back and quarantine themselves for 2 weeks on their return. One example, I have 2 actors who are going within the next 2 weeks to Latvia to film, and there is no quarantine in Latvia, so they can just turn up, be tested. They have managed to get them tests, and then they'll come back here and they'll have to quarantine for 2 weeks.
Okay. But there's obviously countries like Latvia that are in that position. So I guess maybe there might be a case of a lot of the filming moves to different locations than they would have done initially to work around that. And I
think platforms like Netflix are looking at countries they can film in which have got less strict guidelines, or that have had less cases of coronavirus, so that they can find a way to film more easily. But, for the actors, it's worth it because they want to work. They want to go over to Latvia and do it. But there's obviously a massive concern that they would come back and have to quarantine for 2 weeks, because it's not great to have to be in your house for 2 weeks in isolation when you come back.
It's almost like, okay, I do one thing, but then then it's stop-start. It's like, whoa, okay, and then nothing.
That's completely the first thing that I've had actors doing at the moment, other than commercial shoots, which Kat will know as well. They have been able to do a lot from people's houses and using their own locations, but that's the first example I've had for a long time of people actually going out to shoot something at the moment. So we'll see how it goes. It might be a disaster. I don't know.
Well, it's early days, isn't it? And it's like, this whole thing is going to be less just navigating constantly, but it's interesting to hear about that. I hadn't actually heard about that pod thing. So awesome.
We'll see.
But Kat, what I guess if you want to add anything on the commercial, having Helen having said that, or talk a little bit more about theatre or things that you know a bit more about with your clients and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the commercial thing has been really interesting, and that's the thing that's adapted the fastest by far.
Of course.
It's the main breakdown that we see every day is for commercials that are able to turn around quickly, because you've got editing teams can do that at home. Like, for example, we had a guy who, bless him, was booked on a job and then cancelled the day before it would have been going ahead because there were too many stumbling blocks in the way. That was a long day. But they were talking about filming people outside their own houses, and then having a camera person filming them at socially acceptable distance, a director in a van nearby watching the live feed and able to direct them as they were going along, and one more production person that was basically everyone else. So just this poor bloke in the middle trying to sort out all of the extra things, and of course things fell through and things went wrong, and other locations weren't able to sort things out in the way that they would have wanted to because of guidelines changing. And that I think that he needs a beer.
He doesn't need just one beer. He needs a lot of beers.
He needs all of the beer. But yeah, it's interesting in the way that each kind of section of the industry is going about getting back to normal in completely different ways. So commercials, I'm sure you guys have seen lots of things like loads of different brands with short snippets of people. Some of them, you can see that it's been filmed on phones and it's all really informal. And most brands are saying, thank you to the NHS from whichever company it is. Or we're still going, we're still here, this is what we're doing, and I shot this on my phone kind of thing. So for commercials, it's been relatively straightforward, other than the stumbling blocks I was on about earlier. TV and film, like Helen said, shooting abroad makes an awful lot of sense, because while we're world leaders in our industry, there are much safer places to be doing it right now. And if most other countries are in a better position than we are, in fact, I think it's all but one, isn't it? It's all but one other country that's doing better.
We're pretty much up there with the worst. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We're leaders in our industry. We're not leaders in COVID-19.
I would just say that this film that they're shooting is an independent film, so I think it would be a lot easier in that sense to do that. Whereas if it's a company that, a massive Hollywood film, for example, there's just too much red tape. There's so many boxes you've got to tick, to actually get something back up and running again, which is why the big films, are on hold. Batman and the things are filming in London. They just can't make it work at the moment. It's just not possible.
I guess the things that you need big crews and big teams of people for, and even like supporting artists and extras, you just can't have anything like that.
Extras isn't going to be a thing for a long time, which is kind of crazy.
It's just so hard to picture that. To picture like the changes that are going to have to happen, because when you see like the list, imagine a big Hollywood film, you see the list of the people involved at the end, it just goes on forever, and you just think right now that just can't be possible unless it's all being done from different locations, and then that's just a logistical nightmare in itself. So I think it's amazing that things are starting to move, and like you say, independent films are finding their way, because that's only paving a path, isn't it, for other things to happen. I think it's just the bigger side of the bigger side of our industry is just the thing that is feeling
I think also there's people having to be very creative about content. So, they're going to start to make films that are not things that we've ever seen before, but that could be amazing, which they're doing. Need to do it. It's still something creative and new that we will get to see that we haven't seen before. So that's quite exciting in its own way. It's weird, but it's exciting to be able to create something new. And there's going to be so many pandemic themed films, but
and everyone's exhausted with it, aren't they?
I was just thinking it'd be like the Blair Witch Project, like somebody with a camcorder, like going around, like testing center or whatever, but I have to find ways. Copyright on that idea, by the way. I'm sure no one's
it's yours, babe. But
I'm sure something has thought of a film about the pandemic, even though there's already been one, but you know what I'm saying. But I think they can get big actors to do almost monologues. There's a you know, people want to see actors that they love acting, so they're happy to see them doing essentially a monologue on screen. And
something
I think
really interesting that's been happening with something. So I don't know, how familiar are you guys with immersive theatre? Have you seen much immersive theatre in recent years?
A little bit.
Yeah.
So they've been really, really clever, and I think because it's such a new genre, or relatively new to us anyway,
But
that
not
they've
to
been exactly. Yeah, they've been on it for a while. That there's been some really interesting and inventive things coming out of that. Like, for example, Pins and Needles Theatre Company, a really lovely, really innovative company based in Bristol. They created a 1970s style select a quest kind of game that you can do. So it's part show, part escape room. So there's a little quest that you have to follow, and you have to find this thing, and you meet loads of characters and decide which way you want to go. And every path other than one leads to certain death, which is really, really funny. Whenever you die, it's hysterical. I really enjoyed it.
That sounds cool.
So that's one way that immersive theatre has been able to go online. Another is, I don't know if you guys have seen in the Guardian wrote an article about the Great Gatsby immersive show going back in October, because they're going to turn it into a masquerade ball. So everyone's going to go wearing masks. The actors are going to be socially distant. And yeah, that sounded like a really interesting way of doing things. As long as people have got masks on and the audience is safe, why not?
Kat, I love how literally my second question is basically this, and you've just led into it. It's like, basically I was going to say, you know, what things are emerging within the industry, because like we've been doing promoting virtual gigs and creating that platform, as a lot of people are doing, but obviously within, you know, the theatre and the arts, and it's like, so basically that's, you know, you've answered it in that. Is there anything else you guys know of that's happening that you know, is kind of maybe has been, like you say, with immersive theatre, it's been sort of building in its own right, but now it's coming to the forefront? Is there anything else you know of that's happening like that? And also, do you think it is a short-term thing, or could there be longevity in it, even once we're past, you know?
Theatre as we know it at the moment is the trickiest beast to manage, because it's a live experience. You need to be close to people. The actors need to be close to each other, and backstage is a mess, as you guys know. That it's
I know,
manic.
I literally think about it every day, and I'm like,
So there are quite a few think tanks that are on this and trying to think of different ways to get people safely and confidently back into the theatre. So people have been looking at models that they've used in other countries, like South Korea have been, they've been using a track and trace system with really strong hygiene implementations in the theatres, like hand sanitizer everywhere, the ushers are in PPE, things like that. Or the German model, which has been taking out lots of theatre seats and making sure that the audience is nowhere near each other. But I think this is one that's going to be really, really tricky to both get right and to make sure that the audience is safe, and that it's the same, if not a very similar experience. I think that's the thing that is the giant question mark at the moment. But there are a lot of people thinking about it. And I'm really, really cautiously optimistic that there's going to be some funding available when this is all over, because the arts earn serious money. Like in 2018, the West End earned 137 million in VAT alone. So it will, if the arts are invested in, then we will be giving so much back to the economy. I think the Arts Council published a study in 2015 that said that every £1 invested in the arts generates 5 back for the Treasury. And for the music industry, it was as high as 7. So there would be a very big trick missed if there wasn't some serious investment.
100%. And I mean, of course, we've all seen everyone, you know, the amount people have relied on the arts through this period to get them through. You know, it's honest. It's an area that just cannot be overlooked. And if the revenue is that high, it's like, well, you know, it's in everyone's best interest, isn't it? So
it's been proven. Sorry, Helen, go ahead.
Sorry. The problem is at the moment is that obviously there's a lot of places that are are facing closure because they can't get the funding in time. Now, obviously, hopefully, you know, the funding will come through, but it's obviously just hard for them to get it at the moment because there's so much going on. And I'm sure the culture minister is like shouting from the back of the room, like, please God, give us our arts funding. And you know what I mean? And it's like, we're not a priority, but we should be a priority because obviously it's so important. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. But I think
I hear you.
That's the problem, is that, you know, you don't want these smaller, even bigger venues. It's not just smaller venues, but you don't want any venues to face closure, and that's the real problem. In terms of how it's going, I know a lot of people have been doing Zoom play readings, etc., but I just can't really get on board with it. I try, but it's the delay, like the delay on Zoom, it's too much. Like, it just doesn't work. Like doing as a play, I mean, it's great, and if that's what we can do right now, then it's better to do that than not do anything. But it is hard for the actors because they can't interact together. They're just on a Zoom, and it's a bit weird.
Also, I was gonna, sorry, just to add to that, like, obviously we've tried a few Zoom gigs, and I mean they're okay, but I think when it's music, you know, you kind of get a gist of, okay, that's where the song's going. If there's a slight delay, it's like, oh, we get it. But with an acting piece, with, you know, it's all about timing, and it's all about, you know, where the pauses are and where, and it could all be lost so quickly.
Yeah, like if you're like your line.
What? Sorry.
Can you hear me? It's hello. Yeah.
And then you start talking over each other, and then but, I don't know if this is an actual thing, but I was just thinking about it the other day, how they're talking about doing drive-in cinemas.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
The thing about doing drive-in theatre, because you know, if you get enough space and people are able to watch outside in their cars or just sitting on grass or whatever, obviously the actors would have to be socially distanced as well, but I guess you could come up with the right material to make that work. I guess that would be one way that you could get a fair amount of people into a big space, would be doing something like that. Because it's all about being outside. Apparently the virus doesn't spread outside, guys, so we just have to do all our time.
Except we've been keeping 2 meters from anyone we pass outside, so
yeah.
It's so confusing.
It is confusing, but you know, we can only do what we can do and try and listen to the guidelines. And all I know is that everyone in the industry behind the scenes is fighting so hard to get things back. So I do believe it will come back. But theatre is more difficult. It is more difficult than TV and film. That's just a fact. Because people, you know, don't want to be in an auditorium. Someone coughs and then everyone like exits the building. Like, honestly, like, that is just where they're at the moment. So, yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an overwhelming picture when you do try and think about, you know, the life we've been living the last 3 months, to then transferring that into, oh, let's all be packed in a theatre, or let's all be packed at a festival, or, you know, there's all those different things that you almost look at and think, I can't see that being anytime soon. But, you know, like we're saying, it's almost the acceptance of that has kind of passed now. We're into like 3 months in, and it's more about navigating, well, what can we do at this time? How can we support ourselves, our colleagues and our arts to like keep it going? And I guess people are doing that. And as you say, you know, if the creative industry can't be innovative and find new ways to do things, then who can?
The other thing that I just want to say that might be helpful if there's any actors watching, is that if you have been, because there has been things coming through that people are planning for in the future. So if you have been asked to do a self-tape, and you know, you think you did a really great job and you haven't heard anything back, it's not necessarily that you're not still in the running. It's just that they don't know when that project is actually going to start again. So I know in film and TV and in theatre, they've been doing virtual auditions, and people have been recalled, and people have, you know, got through stages and done well, and now they're probably not hearing anything. And of course, like, you should just ask your agent or whoever, like, where you're at. But actually, in a lot of cases, it is because your agent has asked and they've said, this is on hold at the moment because we don't know what the dates are or when this is moving forward. So don't like drive yourself crazy. Just ask your agent or whoever you need to ask. People should be sympathetic to you at this time because, you know, we realize how difficult it is. So don't feel like you can't ask the question, I guess.
Jumping on the back of what you were saying about auditions, that there have been so many self-tapes and virtual things. The number one thing that people can do at the moment, I think, is learn how to nail a self-tape, because that's going to be the way forward for a very long time, I think. And I think it will be beneficial to actors in the future because casting directors are able to see a lot more people via self-tape first time round. So making sure you've got the blank backdrop, so something like this without that.
Chinese.
Make sure your pants aren't in the shot, or like.
Tell me you've seen a self-tape with pants in the shot.
The toilet behind you. Or...
No. But yeah, that's true. I mean, I've certainly learned to self-tape in this time. I hadn't done one before. I hadn't needed to for anything.
It's weird, isn't it? It's a weird skill to be able to master.
Totally weird. And you also you approach it and you think, you like, there's so much to read about it, and you know, get the self-tape right because otherwise it'll be rejected, blah blah blah. But equally, you're then like, well, I need to have like a studio in my house. But then you realize quite quickly that no, I don't. There's simple things you can do and make sure it's, you know, good. It's just making sure you've done all the basic things, you know, the slate at the beginning and all the stuff that's being asked for. You know, it's just making sure you've done those. But once you kind of have that system down, then you really can kind of do most things. And I've been watching quite a few different workshops and things on that. And I was just wondering, like you say, Kat, that could become like a first round norm, couldn't it? Send your self-tape and then we see. I mean, I feel like it's a little bit, I've listened to different people on this, but I feel like it would be a bit sad in, you know, going forward to look at it as being, let's forget bringing people in and, the, you know, sensing their, you know, energy in the room. But I also understand, like, financially and kind of time-wise, it would be a lot quicker. I mean, the commercial world does it quite a lot, doesn't it, already? So yeah,
I mean, this is by no means the death of in-person auditions.
Of
like
course.
you were saying, that you want like to see what someone's like, and people like Hammond and Cox are able to bring people in and have, or start thinking about having face-to-face auditions because they have their own offices, so they're able to completely control any castings and things like that come in. But yeah, just for now, the best thing to do is to nail the self-tape.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be learnt in this time. I'm sure people are doing that, and
it's
it's
a learning curve for everyone. Like, the casting directors also talk quite openly about how it's a learning curve for them, you know, to have to be in this situation and to have to ask you all of these extra questions that they wouldn't normally have to ask you. And it's just about being as efficient as you possibly can and making people's jobs as easy as you possibly can. So, you know, if they've said to you, who do you live with? What's your situation? Blah, blah, blah. Just make sure that you are including all of the information that they need. Otherwise, they're just going to come back and ask you again, or they just won't bother because somebody else gave them the information. So
and then it's
that's really make everyone's lives as easy as you can. Even though all of our lives are difficult at the moment.
So it's an interesting time, and we're all finding our way. Is there anything you wanted to ask out? Because I've got another question, but I feel like you've been quite silent. So
I'm just taking it all in.
It's all new.
Learning all about it. I think we did mention, didn't we, about one-man shows. We were, because I was talking to a friend of mine on, she was on our podcast on Friday, I think, and she was talking about in Germany, because I think, like you said, Kat, they've opened up a lot there because they've been able to social distance, and apparently one-man shows have been quite popular there because obviously you don't need to rehearse with anyone and apart from yourself, and and you're very easily socially distanced. So do you think that might be a thing that might be big?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's worth looking into, certainly. And with the amazing wealth of stand-up that we've got here, and by God, we're going to need a laugh after this, aren't we?
Right.
Yeah. Oh my days. Oh my
yeah.
days. But the difficulty is that in Germany, quite a lot of their theatre is state funded. So Germany gets a lot more support from the government. And here we're pretty much left to our own devices, other than the Arts Council, which I think they themselves get a fair amount of lottery funding, and it comes from different places, but there's not that solid base of support from the government. So if we were to do a one-person show or a stand-up gig here, the theatre would still need to sell at least about 65% capacity, which with the 2 meter distancing rule at the moment is impossible. And especially in a lot of, like, our venues are really old, and some of them you probably catch a cold in there anyway. Absolutely. So it's quite
I think now is a really good time as well as an actor to, if you've been thinking about continuing on writing your own material, now is a really good time to focus on that, because as much as it might not be the time to actually get something commissioned or whatever it is, like, it's a time when people might have a bit of extra time to read your material, to give you feedback, to be open to having a conversation with you and giving you some constructive criticism, etc. So if you feel frustrated that maybe you're not getting seen for the roles that you want to be seen for, and you want to write your own material, now's the time to maybe spend a little bit of time that maybe you don't have under normal circumstances, because you're busy all the time auditioning or whatever it is, to actually have a look at that and see if that's something that you might be interested in.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, any musicians we've spoken to over the last 3 months, most of them, and you included, have started doing, some new writing and putting your time into that, really, because obviously you do that when you can. But yeah, it is kind of, as much as it's been a static time, it's also, I'm sure all of us will have different things to say about what we maybe have felt has come out in us through this time, that maybe we wouldn't have had time to look at or allowed to come through when we're so busy, because we so easily distract ourselves. So it's definitely a time for those creative juices, if you feel the energy to let them through, and if you feel like the capacity to take that on, as well as dealing with just everyday life. So
yeah, obviously no pressure, because it's okay to not doing as well. Like, it's okay to just be like, no, I just want to watch Loose Women or whatever. This is a bit like Loose Women, but apart from Elle here as well.
Yeah.
Also, we wanted to do a nod to Elle and it's basically Elle and the Pocket Bells right now.
Ta-da!
It's a different Elle. I haven't said, for anyone that doesn't know, Helen and Kat and I are also band members of Elle and the Pocket Bells, and but not this. Hang on, which way are you? Not this Elle, a different Elle. But yeah, I've always found that funny that you're called Elle.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that I know all of you. Obviously, I know Chloe, but I know all of you as Elle and the Pocket Bells, which is cool, actually, to come and talk about something else as well.
Yeah.
And kind of the two worlds kind of meeting.
Well, I just love the way you two have both, paved your ways as agents. Like, I'm just so proud of you guys. So it's awesome to have this chat with you. Know that you've got so much insight and inside knowledge into it, and and to know that you're playing that role to support people right now as well as yourselves, because it's it has been a strange time. We can't say anything else. That's all it is. And I think it takes a lot to also take on looking after other people as well, which I know both of you have done and do, because that's the roles you've chosen. And I just think you're doing brilliantly. So
thanks, mate.
I think we all have to check in with ourselves, and just see how we're doing. And I know personally, I've had a couple of times when I've just been having a normal exchange with someone, and I know that that what that person's saying is in no way meant to be a criticism of me, but I've flown off the handle momentarily, and then been like, not with them, but just by myself, and then been like, what is wrong with me? Like, nobody's having a go at me. Like, everyone is just stressed and everyone's in the same situation. So I think, yeah, I don't really know what I'm trying to say, other than I think we all just have to take daily moments to say we're all doing a good job. Like, we're all trying. You know, if you're an actor, you're doing a good job. You know, you're keeping going. You're sending in your self tapes. You're finding out about projects. You're doing your research. All the things you're doing, and as agents, you know, we're working as hard as we possibly can to find the opportunities for our clients and to find future opportunities for our clients. And we're all just doing our best, and we've all got struggles at times, but I think as long as you stay present and you know what your goal is and you just keep going, then you're okay.
Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah, I think even though these are particularly uncertain times, that we've already had some really uncertain times in the last few years as well. So I think if people aren't feeling themselves, or people aren't feeling on top of their game, there's, you know, a myriad of reasons as to why that's happening, and none of it is anybody's fault.
Yeah, and just be honest. Like, if I sent somebody a self tape, and actually this did happen, I won't name names, but I sent someone a self tape and the subject material was quite dark, and they got back to me and they said, I'm not in the right mental headspace to do this at the moment. Like, I hope you understand. And it was a conversation, and I completely understood. And we all have to be a bit gentle with ourselves and just say, like, yes, I want to push forward. I want to do everything I want to do. But there are times when I have to sit back and say, hey, maybe this isn't the project for me right now, or, you know, etc.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you guys are saying. And I was thinking, like, I've definitely had moments where, you know, as an actress, performer, like, feeling frustrated when I have days where I feel like quite a lot of energy and I feel like, I just want to do something with this. You then are sort of like, well, I've got 4 walls and a, you know, and a bit of outside space, and, you know, what can you do with it? Where can you go? But there is always some way you can direct your energy, and it might just be a different direction to what you first had in mind, you know, at the beginning of this year and everything, because it's just going to keep being that way. But I feel like this experience that we're all going through collectively is only going to help make us even more adaptable, even more I think it's great because it is going to make us all more gentle with each other, which I think has been needed, especially in our industry. I think there's a lot coming out where, you know, things are being talked about that weren't before, and there's just a little bit more of humanity coming in and less of you have to be on your game 24/7, because, you know, that was never realistic. Everyone has dips and dives, and they have lives outside of it. But, you know, it's kind of just, I think everyone's just finding a little bit more balance through this. And I hope that continues, because as much, you know, everyone always has, you do have to be professional, you do have to be on your game, of course, but it's like, you also have to understand that stuff happens in life, and this has just been like a big magnifying glass on it, I think.
We've all got to love each other. Love each other.
Love each other.
That's it.
Yeah, we'll write any song, we'll do that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Boom.
Love each other. That's the message.
We could get that message, and it could be taken various ways. So
I'm feeling a bit Bill and Ted now, like, be excellent to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I think I've covered, like, my last question was about how have you witnessed people coping through this time. So I guess we've gone to that naturally. Well, we're good at this, girls.
Yeah.
Should
we do our Jerry Springer final thoughts?
Oh my god, I love it.
I really like the final thoughts part. That always I always enjoy that. So yeah, why not?
Okay, I'll go for it. I'm not doing an American accent though.
I'll go on.
Okay, guys. No. So my final thoughts. So my final thoughts are that the industry is definitely still alive. As much as we might all be scared and we might all be thinking, where is this going, which is completely normal during a pandemic. I mean, what even is a pandemic? And we've managed to survive one at the moment. The arts will never die. Everybody needs the arts, and everybody needs that channel in their lives in order to be happier and to thrive. So it will continue. We will be great again, but you know, there will be adaptations, and as long as we stay open and receptive to those, I think we just have to stay pushing forward and positive. And that is my final thoughts.
Boom.
Love that. Right. Shall I finally think? So I think that part of the pandemic has really highlighted that artists are important. And I think a lot of the time coming into the industry, especially if you're a performer, you're told quite a lot during training that there are so many other people up for the same jobs as you, and you know, there are family pressures maybe from some people saying, you know, why haven't you got a real job and things like that. But I think the pandemic has really highlighted that the arts are amazing financially for the country. They're good for your mental health and physically. Like there's a really interesting WHO study that I was reading earlier, that I think they did in November last year, saying that having an interaction with the arts helps you feel better physically, and it's physically good for you. And it's like you were saying earlier, Chloe, it's something that people have turned to during this time to be creative and to do, well, I was going to say to do something other than watching Netflix, but watch Netflix, it's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think any artists that are feeling, you know, I don't know why I'm doing this, why am I putting myself through this? I think I would just say you are important. And if you want to keep going, you should keep going because you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, 100%. Oof, you girls, you got it all. I don't know what to say to follow any of that.
Chloe's final thought.
Chloe's final thoughts. Mine are always about just, you know, being kind to everyone and loving yourself. And
I'll
be
bugger
more
off.
kind,
Be more
my
kind.
friends. Try to be more kind.
Please open the hairdressers. Please open the hairdressers.
Oh, please.
Yeah,
It's too much.
literally,
I
what
gotta
is
get
it?
rid of it.
Yeah, my final thoughts are all in line with both of yours. I think it's the title was Creators, What Lies Ahead, and I think what lies ahead is whatever we make of it, really. You know, it is down to us to kind of pave that way, navigate, not us for necessarily, but you know, we can be part of it. Yeah, to pave the way, to navigate it, and do that together as a community, because I think we are better when we are together, especially artists. And obviously it's not gonna be quite the together that we normally want for a while, but you know, we can do things like this, and we can do things to keep the momentum going, to keep any sort of enthusiasm going, because it's too important to let slide. And I think there is an element of patience, and there is an element of just, you know, if you can't, like I said, if there's days when you feel frustrated that you can't do what you love to do, find another way to channel that energy and allow yourself to tap into new things creatively if you haven't before, because that's great, and that will only help you kind of develop as a person, develop as an artist. So I think there's a lot of that going on for anyone I speak to within our industry, and I think the more we can keep that going, the more we will find ways to come out on top and in time.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So before I give my final thoughts, we have actually got a question.
lovely.
We normally do the questions, then the final thoughts, but the question has just come up. So I'll put it up on the screen and read it out, and then whoever wants to answer can answer. So this is from Ross Barnes, /Elliot. Loving the video. I just wanted to ask, have any of you learned anything about yourselves during this time, positive or negative, that may help in the future, professionally or personally?
Rossi.
Get in there with an in-depth question.
Great.
Love you, Ross. We love you, Ross. Anyone want to go?
Kat?
Okay, I've learned that I really needed a break. I needed to exercise. My God, I needed to move and do something. And it's so easy to get swept up and run around town and grab a sandwich on the go and be here and there and everywhere. And I mean, it's easier now because we have to be at home, but forcing yourself to just stop it and sit down and not necessarily do a ton of projects at once. Like in the middle of February, I was writing music for a show, and then I ended up in it when one of the girls got a commercial in Spain, and that was, and I tried to learn to drive and was running the business, and I was just like, no, sit down.
Sit down,
sit down and shut up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so forcing yourself to stop and not having to be a productivity machine all the time is brilliant. And yoga's just great, isn't it? It's just yummy. Like it.
Yeah, look at Chloe.
Namaste, namasama, mamasa.
Yeah, I guess the same, very much that, you needed that switch off button because I put a lot of pressure on myself. I feel like I'm responsible for my own happiness and the happiness of all my clients, which is obviously quite a lot of happiness.
Big, innit?
So it's a lot. Like, I take on their struggles and their happiness. In like, when they do well, I do well. When they feel worried, I feel worried. So that's a lot.
Mama Helen.
Yeah, so that's a burden. So you need to take time to meditate, to switch off, to find a bit of inner peace every now and then. The other thing, I guess, is really reconnecting with people in terms of you're having a Zoom call with friends, and maybe you could have done that not during lockdown. It's like you weren't seeing them that weekend, but you could have Zoomed them and you could have said hello, and making those personal connections with people and reminding them that you are close friends and that you do care, rather than being so busy all the time that you're just not making contact with those people, I think. Yeah.
Amazing. Is it my turn, or are you going to go, Elle?
I can go. Yeah. Personally, this are very similar, actually. I learned that actually, I think I'm probably going to do a lockdown myself every year. I'm going to do like a month. Because I learned so much in the first month that I needed to stop doing a lot of things that I was doing, and that weren't really helpful, and they were just knackering me out. So I learned a lot of things to stop and some new things to start, and just really basic things, just making yourself feel better, doing more exercise, going for runs and stuff. It's funny how when the government says you've got an hour to exercise, you actually do it. It's weird, and I don't normally follow what the government says, but I found myself doing that hour exercise every day, and I was like, actually, why am I doing this anyway? I should be doing this. Yeah, professionally, I think I've learned. Obviously, Chloe, you were part of it as well. I took on quite a big project just because I wanted to, and it wasn't a project that really stressed me out too much because it was a nice thing. But I've learned that actually so much can be achieved with people, much more than I thought could be, if I just took a little bit of time to stand back and actually think about how we were going to do it, rather than get stressed about it being too hard and then kind of not doing it, but just taking a little bit of time, which we've had the good fortune to have, has helped like massively in planning, strategy and stuff like that. So I'm going to just take more time, I think, on things.
Sorry, my mum just danced past the window.
I saw you looking and I thought something's happening, something good's happening.
So basically, I'm in the study, but the study is also the entrance to like the living room. So my parents had to walk around the outside of the house.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
That's amazing. They could have just come in. I'd love to see them.
I know. I should have brought the dog in as well.
Oh, puppy.
I know. But they've gone now. I don't know. They were like, whoa, like what they went past and they've like gone off somewhere. I don't know.
Oh my God, that's great.
Distancing. Don't send the police around. They're social distancing.
Oh, good parents.
Amazing.
And Chloe, well, before we wrap
Yeah.
up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I echo all three of you. Like, as everything you said, I feel the same. But I think what I've learned is learn and still learning. Well, I've known this already, but I've learned even more that I can create far more like pressure on myself and feel like far more stretched by other people's what maybe other people, or I think other people need from me, than is actually the reality. I think I'm learning that I need to know exactly what my boundaries are and what my where my energy needs to go for me first, so that I feel I can give to the people I want to give to, because I do love to give, and I do love to be a part of all the projects, and I love to say yes to everything, and I've known that forever, and that won't change. But I think it's about refining what things need your energy, what things are really important to you, and I'm learning how to do that, because it's like the whole filling up your own cup before, you know, trying to give to anyone else. And you girls, and well, all of you know that I've definitely been trying to do it for a long time. But this period, I realized, I think I've had conversations with Elliot where I'm like, oh, I just feel like I'm trying to, you know, so many things I'm needed for. And he's like, well, what are they? And then when I try and list them, I'm like, I think it's just all in my head, you know, like I think there are things, but they're all manageable and they're all achievable. It's just about setting aside that time to create that calm, so that you can come at them with the energy you want. Because, you know, we all want things in life, and we get one thing, we're going to aspire to something else, and I think that's the nature. But I've been guilty of having momentum and then crashing, and having momentum and crashing. So I think that's the biggest thing I'm learning, really, like how to have momentum and it be calm, so that then when, you know, we are able to go out and live a bit more socially, and then, you know, I'll be able to do that successfully, rather than always feeling a bit spread, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well done, Chloe.
Great.
Well done, everyone. I
Right.
think everyone's doing great.
Lovely.
Cricket clap.
Thank
Yeah,
you for inviting us.
Yeah, it's been really nice.
Thanks, girls, for coming on. It's been really interesting, and you know, there's going to be so much unraveling as time goes on. So yeah, keep us updated with anything you know, and if you feel you want to come on again, and if there's something massive happens, let us know. Because
if anyone wants to ask any more questions, just comment and we can answer them afterwards as well.
Yeah. Comment on either the YouTube stream or the Facebook stream, and yeah,
absolutely. And I'll put like links to everyone that's on as well underneath the YouTube thing when I properly post it as well. So so people can find you and say hello.
So just wrap up and sorry, I'm telling you what to do, but like just let everyone know where Helen and Kat are from, agency wise.
Okay, so I'm from International Artists, so it's IAM Global on Instagram, or you can catch me on my own Instagram page, which is at Helen Kelly Style.
I love it. I love your style, mate. You are so stylish.
My earrings, can I just tell you, this is funny. My earrings are clip-ons, right? Because I've got a pair of balls for an ear. So I have like basically an ear that's cut in two. So I have to wear clip-on earrings, but because these are so heavy, they're glued to my ears with eyelash glue.
Helen,
that's commitment, mate.
That is a classic drag queen tip that drag queens do.
That is amazing.
Jesus Christ, it's amazing.
Amazing. And Kat, where are your earrings glued to?
Oh, mate, the back of my drawer. I mean, this for me is a lot of effort. Like, I am dressed down Sally. You know me, Chloe. I'm not very shiny.
Thank you. You're so shiny.
I'm so shiny. Look at me shine. So I can be caught. So I'm with Clarendon Personal Management. You can find us on Twitter at CPM Agents. If you want to say hello, that's totally fine. I'm Gisby Cat on Twitter, but I tend not to say anything because, frankly, I'll just forget. TBQH.
Amazeballs.
Shamaze.
All right, you can wrap up now.
Brilliant.
up. And
Yeah, thank you guys.
love.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on, and it's been really cool to shed a light on another side of the industry which we haven't really touched on much on these podcasts. And I think some of the insights there were brilliant, and I would urge anyone to rewatch it again, because I probably will, to learn everything. And I think the main message is, obviously we've got to look after each other, and be more calm as well as be more kind. So thank you very much, and we will see you next Thursday.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Woo.